She didn't shout. She didn't raise a hand. She didn't even move when the white passenger leaned over the armrest and said, loud enough for half the gate to hear, "Seats like this aren't for people like you." Heads turned. A few gasps rippled through the boarding line. Phones tilted upward, catching the moment the way storm chasers catch the first crack of lightning. And in the center of it all stood Dr. Naomi Hart, calm, steady, unblinking, as the seat she paid for, the seat she deserved, was stolen right out from under her. The gate agent hesitated, the crowd watched, and the insult hung in the air like smoke that refused to clear. What happened next would ground the entire flight in under 60 seconds. But before we continue, hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's return to Dr. Naomi Hart. The passenger who stole her seat leaned back with a satisfied smirk, crossing her arms as if she'd just defended some invisible territory. The gate agent barely looked at Naomi before saying, "Ma'am, please step aside. First class is full." Full. As if Naomi hadn't checked in an hour earlier. As if her boarding pass didn't clearly say 1A. As if her presence alone disrupted the aesthetic this woman felt entitled to protect. The words weren't loud, but they cut like a sharp edge. "You don't fit the profile for this cabin." A few feet away, a young trainee attendant froze mid-step. She'd seen Naomi's skin green. She'd seen the system approve her seat without question. And now she watched a lie replace the truth in real time, swallowed whole by prejudice. The crowd shifted again. Someone whispered, "Is she really taking her seat?" Another muttered, "Wow, they're not even hiding it." Naomi didn't flinch. Not when the passenger tossed her a dismissive glance. Not when the gate agent gestured toward the economy line. Not even when a security officer approached, posture stiff, hand already drifting toward his belt as if a black woman calmly standing at her assigned seat constituted a threat. Instead, she inhaled once, slow, controlled, anchoring herself the way she had 100 times before when the world tried to shrink her. But this time would not end the way they expected. Not today. Not with this woman. Not on this flight. Naomi did not move. Not when the white passenger folded her arms like a queen guarding stolen territory. Not when the security officer shifted his stance as if preparing to escort her away, and not when the crowd leaned in, sensing tension thickening like humidity before a storm. She simply lifted her eyes to the gate agent, calm but unwavering, and said, "Run my name." The gate agent hesitated, caught between authority and discomfort, the same way bias often hides behind procedure. "Ma'am," he repeated, "I need you to step aside. You are holding up the boarding line." But Naomi heard the truth beneath his rehearsed tone. He was not asking her to step aside. He was asking her to step down. Behind him, the young trainee, the one who had frozen earlier, took a small breath and whispered. Her boarding pass scanned green. "I saw it." The supervisor snapped around, eyes sharp. "You will not get involved in this. Do you understand?" The trainee's jaw tightened, but she stepped back, hands shaking. Naomi watched it all with a kind of stillness that comes only from a lifetime of moments like this. Moments when her legitimacy had been questioned before her identity was even considered. Moments when she learned that silence was not surrender, but strategy. The white passenger settled deeper into Naomi's seat, looking smug, looking proud, as if she had won something. "Told you," she said loudly. "Some people will do anything to get an upgrade." A ripple ran through the crowd. A few people looked away. A few stared harder. A few recorded everything. The security officer stepped closer, posture stiff, voice low as if dealing with a threat. "Ma'am, I am asking you one last time. Move to the side until we resolve this." Naomi turned toward him slowly. Her tone did not rise. Her expression did not shift. But her words cut through the space between them like a clean blade. "Resolve it," she said, "by checking the system instead of checking my skin." A hush fell across the gate. Even the flight announcements seemed to quiet themselves for a moment. But the officer, like so many before him, defaulted to authority instead of accuracy. "If there is an issue," he replied, "we will straighten it out later. For now, you need to comply." Comply. Naomi felt that word vibrate through her like an old bruise being pressed. At 24, she had complied when a hotel clerk said she did not look like someone who could afford the executive floor. At 31, she complied when a banker scrutinized every page of her documents before approving a loan that men with half her qualifications received without question. At 42, she complied when a conference staffer asked her to wait outside because she did not look like a keynote speaker. She had complied. She had survived. She had excelled. But survival and compliance were no longer the same thing. Not here. Not now. Not with someone else sitting in her seat while pretending not to see her humanity. Naomi inhaled once, steady and full. Then she reached into her bag and tapped her phone. Her voice remained soft, controlled, almost gentle. Activate protocol A7. On the other end, her executive assistant did not ask a single question. Yes, Dr. Hart. Activating now. The gate agent's tablet buzzed instantly. So did the supervisor's. A sharp electronic chime echoed from the podium. The security officer straightened as his radio crackled with an unexpected override alert. The white passenger in 1A blinked, her confidence flickering for the first time. And then, from the end of the jet bridge, a man in a Navy operations jacket approached at a brisk pace. His badge identified him as a senior fleet operations officer. His stride slowed when he saw Naomi. Then he stopped entirely. His right hand rose in a crisp, practiced salute, sharp enough to slice the tension in the air. The crowd reacted the way crowds do when the truth enters a room without warning. A gasp here. A whisper there. Someone muttered. Wait? Is she someone important? Naomi did not return the salute. She did not need to. The officer lowered his hand and spoke loudly enough for everyone to hear. Dr. Hart, we were not informed you would be traveling today. Please accept our apologies. The situation is being corrected immediately. The white passenger's smirk shattered. The gate's supervisor's face went pale. The security officer took one involuntary step back. And the trainee attendant, the only one who had told the truth, looked at Naomi with wide, stunned eyes, as if seeing a lighthouse appear in the dark. Naomi stayed exactly where she was, poised, steady, unshaken. The moment was no longer about a seat. It was about something much bigger, and every person in that gate knew it, even if they did not have the words for it yet. The gate did not breathe. Not the passengers, not the staff, not even the humming fluorescent lights that had been buzzing all afternoon. Everything seemed to freeze as the senior fleet operations officer stepped forward, placing himself between Naomi and the people who had dismissed her only moments earlier. His voice carried the weight of someone who understood exactly who she was and exactly how badly the gate team had misjudged her. Dr. Hart, your seat will be restored immediately. Please allow me to handle this. The white passenger in 1A, the one who had planted herself in Naomi's seat with the confidence of entitlement reinforced by silence, finally stood up. Or rather, she stumbled up, as though her legs forgot how to hold her. Wait, she sputtered. I did not know she was. I thought. Her words dissolved beneath the growing murmurs circling the gate like wind around a storm's eye. Someone whispered, she is the one who runs Horizon Aviation Technologies. Another voice replied, no wonder operations reported in so fast. The trainee attendant's eyes widened as the realization crashed over her. She had been right. The system had been right. Naomi had been right. But the supervisor, red-faced and still clutching the tablet that held the electronic override, tried one last time to salvage what little authority he had left. Sir, he began, if I may explain. The operations officer did not even turn his head. His reply was sharp and decisive. Do not speak. The supervisor's jaw locked shut, the same way the bank manager's voice had cracked in Naomi's memory years ago when confronted with the truth. Bias always hid behind confidence until truth exposed it. Dr. Hart, the officer continued, please follow me to the priority lane while we clear this mess. But Naomi did not move. Instead, she lifted her chin slightly, and the room seemed to steady around her. I am not the one who needs to move, she said quietly, the words landing with a force disproportionate to their volume. The officer nodded once. He understood. Authority did not come from elevation. It came from knowing when to stand still. The security officer, the one who had been ready to escort Naomi away only minutes before, suddenly struggled to find a place to rest his eyes. He looked at the floor, then at the ceiling, then at the passengers who were still recording, and finally at Naomi. "Ma'am," he said, voice softer now. "If there has been any misunderstanding." Naomi cut him off with a look. Not unkind, but unflinching. "A misunderstanding happens once," she said. This was a decision. The ripple that followed was immediate. A murmur of agreement swept through the crowd, a resonance built from people who had seen this too many times and were tired of pretending not to. And then came the breaking point. The tablet in the supervisor's hands buzzed again. This time, the alert was unmistakable. The red banner across the screen read, "Flight access suspended." The plane had been grounded. Gasps broke through the gate. A man near the back muttered, "They grounded an entire flight in under a minute." And another whispered, "Someone is in very serious trouble." The operations officer inhaled slowly, then addressed the staff with a tone that brooked no argument. "Effective immediately, all boarding is paused. Internal compliance has been notified, and Dr. Hart will determine the next steps." The white passenger in 1A froze mid-breath. Her face went pale, then flushed, then pale again, as if her body could not decide which reaction would save her. "Please," she said, searching the air for an escape. "I did not do anything wrong. I just assumed." "Exactly," Naomi said, her voice carrying the precision of a verdict. "You assumed." The trainee attendant stepped forward, her voice steadier than before. "Dr. Hart," she said, "if I may, I would like it noted that your pass scanned green. I saw it with my own eyes." Naomi turned toward her, and something softened behind her steady expression. The trainee had risked her job to tell the truth. Not many would have done that. "Your honesty matters," Naomi replied. "Hold on to it." The supervisor flinched. The security officer swallowed hard, and the operations officer raised his voice for all to hear. "Everyone remain where you are. There will be an immediate internal review. This incident now falls under executive jurisdiction. In other words, Naomi's jurisdiction." Phones continued recording. The truth had found its witness. And for the first time since the white passenger stole her seat, Naomi allowed herself to exhale, not out of relief, but out of resolve. The moment for silence had passed. Justice had entered the room. The gate was no longer a place of boarding and departures. It had become a courtroom without walls, a stage where truth stood center, and every hidden bias illuminated itself under the harsh airport lights. The white passenger, still hovering beside the seat she had stolen, looked around as if the crowd might somehow defend her, but all she found were raised phones and faces carved with disbelief. "I did not know," she repeated weakly, her voice cracking at its own excuse. "If I had known who she was," the operations officer cut in, firm and unimpressed. "Respect is not conditional on recognition. It is required on principle." The words landed like a gavel strike. The supervisor shifted uncomfortably, clutching the buzzing tablet as if it might shield him. The security officer kept glancing at Naomi, then at his boots, as though the polished floor might offer him the apology he did not know how to form with his own mouth. Naomi remained still, her presence anchoring the chaos swirling in her wake. She had lived too many years in rooms where she was treated like an inconvenience, only to be honored the moment her credentials surfaced. Here, in this airport gate, that pattern was unfolding again, and she watched it with a quiet familiarity that stung more than it surprised. The operations officer stepped closer, his posture respectful but urgent. "Dr. Hart, compliance has requested an immediate record of the incident. They are monitoring the situation in real time." Several passengers gasped. Live monitoring meant the moment was no longer local, it was institutional. The trainee attendant, whose nerves had been betraying her since the first confrontation, took a trembling step forward. "Sir," she said softly, "can I submit my statement now? I want it on record that Dr. Hart did nothing wrong. Her seat was valid. The system confirmed it." The supervisor spun toward her. "Do not say another word." But the trainee was done being silent. Her voice rose, not in volume, but in clarity. "I saw her boarding pass. I saw her name. I watched it scan green. You ignored it." The crowd reacted with a wave of murmurs. Someone whispered, "Good for her." Someone else added, "Finally someone is telling the truth." Naomi gave the trainee a small nod, just enough to steady the young woman's shaking shoulders. The truth, spoken aloud, had a power all its own. The white passenger's composure shattered. "She is twisting this," she snapped, grasping at the last thread of control. I did not mean anything by it. I simply thought that she did not belong. Naomi finished for her, her tone cutting through the noise with the precision of a laser. You thought that because of my clothes, my skin, my quiet. You thought my presence in a first-class seat was a mistake waiting to be corrected. The woman blinked, speechless. The operations officer exhaled sharply, as though steadying himself before issuing the next order. Supervisor Bradley, he said, addressing the man who had been trying to salvage his collapsing authority, hand over your tablet. The supervisor hesitated. The officer repeated, now. With stiff fingers, Bradley surrendered it. The officer tapped once on the screen, and the device emitted a sharp confirmation tone. A red banner flashed across it, staff access revoked. A collective gasp rippled through the gate. The supervisor's mouth fell open. Sir, please, I can explain. You will explain to compliance, the officer replied. Not to me. And not here. The security officer swallowed hard, visibly rattled. The trainee stared wide-eyed at the revoked badge, understanding the gravity of what she had just witnessed. But the officer was not finished. He looked at Naomi with full deference. Dr. Hart, until you determine the next step, the flight will remain grounded. We are under your directive. Naomi let the statement settle into the room. Every eye remained fixed on her, waiting, wondering, realizing. For the first time, the passengers understood that this woman they had seen dismissed and doubted had the authority to halt an entire aircraft with a single phone call. A man in the crowd finally spoke. She grounded the flight just by activating a protocol? A woman beside him replied. She must be high up. Very hot. Naomi's gaze swept over the people around her, including the woman who stole her seat and the staff whose silence had allowed it. She saw fear, regret, respect, and confusion tangled together like threads in a frayed rope. And then she spoke, her voice steady, each syllable deliberate. I want every word of this documented. Not because I need vindication, but because this should never happen to anyone else who looks like me. The gate went silent. Even the hum of the airport seemed to pause. Naomi had not raised her voice. She had simply raised the truth. And in that stillness, everyone felt the shift. The moment was no longer about a seat. It was about the system that had tried to move her out of it. The passengers were no longer whispering. They were holding their breath, waiting for the next crack in a system that had already begun to crumble under its own weight. The supervisor stood frozen, staring at the revoked access banner on his tablet as though the device had betrayed him. The white passenger who had stolen Naomi's seat clutched her designer bag tighter, shrinking into herself as if she wished she could disappear between the armrests she had claimed so confidently only minutes earlier. But Naomi, steady and composed, felt something shift inside her. Not anger, not victory, something far older, carved from every room that had tried to shrink her, every moment when her competence had been doubted before a single fact had been checked. And as she stood in the middle of that airport gate, surrounded by strangers, she felt the weight of memory pressed gently against the back of her mind. It came without warning, the way memories do when present pain pulls up past scars. She was 16 again, standing in a small regional airport with her mother after a school debate competition. She remembered approaching the counter, nervous but proud, holding the ticket her mother had saved for. She remembered the agent looking at her mother, then at her, then at the ticket, and saying, "This cannot be right. These seats are not usually purchased by people like you." She remembered how the words had sliced into her before she even understood why they hurt. She remembered her mother's hand tightening around hers, steadying her, quieting her, teaching her without speaking that dignity was not granted, it was carried. The flash of memory faded as quickly as it came, leaving Naomi standing in the present again, but the echo of it hardened her resolve. She would not shrink for anyone. Not here. Not ever again. The operations officer approached her quietly, lowering his voice so only she could hear. "Dr. Hart, compliance is asking if you would like them to dispatch an audit team to the gate." Naomi's eyes did not leave the trembling supervisor or the white passenger who now refused to look anywhere but the floor. "Not yet," she said. "I want to hear the truth spoken before I bring in the paperwork." The officer nodded, understanding the difference. Accountability was not just about documentation, it was about revelation. The trainee attendant stepped forward hesitantly, glancing at the cameras pointed in her direction. "I will speak," she said. "I saw the entire thing." The passenger took her seat, lied about the scan, and the supervisor ignored the verification. Her voice shook, but her conviction did not. The crowd murmured, approving her courage. The supervisor snapped, "You are out of line." "No," Naomi said sharply, her voice ringing with a decisive authority that silenced even the overhead announcements. "She is finally in line, and you are finally being seen." The security officer shifted uncomfortably, sweat collecting at the edge of his collar. "Dr. Hart," he said, "I want to apologize for how I approached you. It was not my intent to escalate the situation." Naomi met his eyes, her expression level. "Intent is what you think," she said. "Impact is what I live." The security officer lowered his gaze. The white passenger's breathing grew louder, shallow, frantic. She clutched her bag tighter, her voice trembling. "Please, I am sorry. I truly did not mean any harm. I honestly believed." Naomi cut through her stumbling words with the same calm precision she had held since the beginning. "You believed I did not belong. You believed that without checking the manifest, without checking my boarding pass, without checking anything except the color of my skin." The woman flinched as if the truth itself had struck her. The operations officer addressed the crowd, his voice formal. "Dr. Hart, would you like the passenger removed from the flight?" Naomi took a slow breath. Justice was not revenge, it was clarity. "No," she said. "Not yet. First, she will acknowledge exactly what she did. Not for me, but for the people watching who have lived this moment more times than they should." The white passenger swallowed hard, tears gathering at the corners of her eyes. The entire gate turned toward her. She stood at the center of her own reckoning. And for the first time since the confrontation began, she understood that this was not just about a seat. It was about everything that seat had come to represent. The white passenger stood trembling, clutching her bag as though it might shield her from the truth settling heavy in the air. She opened her mouth, then closed it, searching for words that refused to form. Finally, with her voice cracking under the weight of dozens of eyes upon her, she managed to whisper, "I assumed she did not belong because she did not look like someone who flies in first class." A single, sharp inhale swept across the gate. Not outrage, recognition. The kind of recognition shared by people who had seen the same judgment disguised 1,000 different ways. Naomi did not move. She did not soften. Her stillness was the lesson. "You judged my worth by your comfort," she said. "And you mistook your comfort for truth." The operations officer stepped forward, his tone formal. "Statement recorded. Compliance has logged the confession." The supervisor looked like he had been struck. The security officer stared at the floor, his shame settling deep in his posture. But Naomi was not finished. She lifted her phone again and spoke with quiet precision. "Carla, initiate phase 2 of protocol A7. On the other end, her assistant's voice came through instantly, crisp and steady. Phase 2 activated. Internal audit teams have been notified. All staff actions during the last 15 minutes are being logged in real time. I repeat, real time." The supervisor blanched. The trainee attendant's eyes widened. Passengers murmured as the gate screens blinked and updated. Every person present now understood the same truth. Naomi had not merely grounded the flight. She had opened its walls for inspection. "Supervisor Bradley," Carla's voice continued through Naomi's phone. "Your prior service complaints are being pulled. 8 of them involve passengers of color. 5 were marked unverified without documentation." A wave of murmurs rolled through the crowd. Someone whispered, 8 complaints? 5 buried. That is not a mistake." Another muttered, "How long has this been happening?" The supervisor stumbled backward a step, as though trying to retreat from his own past. "This is being taken out of context," he pleaded. "I only followed the guidelines I was given." "Guidelines do not erase accountability," Naomi replied, her voice unwavering. "They reveal who hides behind them." The security officer, who had been rigid and defensive before, lifted his chin just enough to speak. "Dr. Hart," he said solemnly, "I should have checked the system before I acted. I approached you with a presumption instead of a protocol. That was wrong." Naomi gave him a steady look, not cruel, not forgiving, simply honest. "Bias in uniform is still bias," she said. He swallowed hard and lowered his gaze again. The operations officer addressed the gate with firm authority. "As of this moment, All staff involved in this incident are relieved of duty pending review. Dr. Hart, the ground crew awaits your directive. Phones continued recording. Passengers stood shoulder to shoulder, watching justice unfold without theatrics, without shouting, without any gesture louder than Naomi's breath. The trainee attendant stepped closer, her voice trembling but resolute. I want it noted that I tried to speak up earlier, she said. I was stopped. Naomi looked at her with something like quiet pride. Courage is not measured by volume, she said. It is measured by timing. You spoke when it mattered. Tears pricked the trainee's eyes. The white passenger, now fully unraveling, took a step toward Naomi. Please, she whispered. I did not mean to hurt anyone. I made a mistake. I panicked. I am truly sorry. Naomi regarded her, and the room held its breath. Every witness understood that this moment was not about punishment. It was about truth. Being sorry does not undo harm, Naomi said softly. But acknowledging it begins accountability. That is why you will make your statement on record, and then you will step aside so this flight can move forward without the shadow you cast over it. The woman nodded, small and broken, the false confidence stripped from her. The operations officer raised his voice again. Dr. Hart, shall we escort her out now? But Naomi shook her head. Not yet. First, everyone here will hear exactly what happened. Not for my sake, but for every person who has ever had their legitimacy questioned before their boarding pass was scanned. A hush settled. The moment stretched. And then, quietly, firmly, Naomi added, let the truth land before the plane does. The gate did not dare make a sound. The gate felt tighter than airspace just before turbulence, as though every molecule understood that the moment had reached its point of no return. The white passenger stood trembling. The supervisor stood pale and hollow, and the security officer stood stripped of his earlier certainty. Every eye remained fixed on Naomi, waiting for the truth she had demanded to finally settle into place. The operations officer stepped forward, his voice resonant with authority. Dr. Hart, compliance is confirming that all statements are being transcribed and time-stamped. They are requesting your formal directive. Naomi exhaled slowly, the kind of breath that felt like closing a chapter she never wanted written in the first place. She looked at the white passenger who had stolen her seat, who had stolen her dignity in front of strangers without hesitation, who now wore the expression of someone confronting the consequences she never expected to face. You may speak, Naomi said quietly, and you will speak honestly. The woman's lips trembled. She stared at the floor as though the truth might be easier to say to tile than to a human being. I took her seat, she said, voice cracking, because I assumed she was not supposed to sit there. She did not look like someone who belonged in first class. I did not check the boarding pass. I just acted. Silence struck the gate like a dropped weight. The trainee attendant flinched. A man near the back muttered, There it is. Another whispered, That is what people never admit out loud. Naomi's eyes did not soften, though something in them went still, as if her body had grown tired of hearing the same confession in different forms throughout her life. She turned to the supervisor next. And you, she said. He swallowed hard. I dismissed the scan. The system showed a green confirmation, but I thought it was a glitch. I trusted my judgment over the technology. Your judgment, Naomi repeated, the words sharp but measured. Or your assumptions? The supervisor hesitated, then spoke the truth he had tried to dodge. My assumptions. The operations officer lifted the tablet, his voice carrying through the gate. Statement recorded. Compliance has registered both admissions. The security officer stepped forward next, his tone subdued. Dr. Hart, I approached you based on the report the supervisor gave me. I did not verify the information. I acted on appearance instead of protocol. It was wrong. I am sorry. Naomi held his gaze for a moment that stretched just long enough to become meaningful. Protocol exists to protect people from assumptions, she said. When you choose assumption, you abandon your duty. He nodded, shame etched deep into his expression. The gate remained suspended in stillness until Naomi raised her phone once more. Carla, she said, prepare my public statement. Have the audit team move to the next phase. Carla's voice came through immediately. Yes, Dr. Hart. Phase 3 is ready. All access points linked to this incident will be frozen pending your approval. The operations officer stiffened. Dr. Hart, Would you like me to ground the aircraft entirely until the resolution is executed? Naomi paused, letting the weight of the moment settle on her shoulders. She remembered the hotel in Charlotte when she was 16, the airline line where she was told her ticket looked suspicious at 27. The private conference where a guard redirected her to the service entrance despite her keynote lanyard at 34. She remembered every moment she had been told she did not look like she belonged. She remembered every time she had swallowed her dignity for the sake of moving forward. Not today. Yes, she said. The flight will remain grounded until the corrective actions are completed. Gasps rippled through the passengers, but not in protest, in awe. A woman near the front whispered, "She just grounded a plane by speaking." Another said, "No, she grounded it by existing in her power." The white passenger finally broke, tears streaking her mascara. "Please," she whispered, "I cannot miss this flight. I have an important meeting." Naomi regarded her with an expression carved from stone and memory. "So did I," she said, "and you tried to remove me from it." The woman covered her mouth, realizing the full weight of what she had done. Naomi turned to the operations officer. "Escort her out of the gate. She will not be flying today." "Yes, Dr. Hart," he replied. The gate watched as the white passenger was escorted away, shoulders slumped, steps unsteady, the consequences of her choices unfolding in real time. Naomi remained still, poised, centered, the eye of a storm that had finally begun to shift. Then she spoke once more, her tone controlled but unshakable. "Let this be the moment when assumptions stop replacing truth." The room did not dare breathe until she finished. The white passenger's footsteps faded down the jet bridge until the gate could no longer hear her. And yet the weight of what she had done remained suspended in the air like the echo of a door that had been slammed too hard. Passengers stood motionless, unsure whether they had witnessed justice, humiliation, or a necessary reckoning. The operations officer returned to Naomi, posture straight, voice steady. "Dr. Hart, the passenger has been escorted out. We are awaiting your directive for the staff involved." Naomi looked at the supervisor first. Bradley's face had drained of color entirely, and the sheen of sweat along his hairline betrayed the panic he was trying desperately to mask. He attempted a half-step forward. "Dr. Hart, I swear, I never meant—" "Stop," Naomi said. Her voice was not loud, but it carried enough gravity to halt him instantly. "You did not simply act in the heat of the moment. You acted out of a pattern you have repeated for years." The operations officer held up the tablet, the red banners still visible. "Compliance confirmed multiple prior complaints," he said. 5 dismissed without investigation. Gasps stirred the crowd again. Bradley opened his mouth, but his words tangled in fear. I thought I was enforcing policy." "Policy does not target people," Naomi replied. "Assumptions do." The security officer stood next. The rigid authority he carried earlier had dissolved into a mixture of guilt and understanding. "Dr. Hart," he began quietly, "I accept responsibility for my actions. I should have verified the information. I should have treated you as a passenger, not a profile." Naomi studied him for a long moment. "Correction," she said. "You should treat every passenger as a person." He nodded slowly, shame tightening his shoulders. Then Naomi turned to the trainee attendant. The young woman straightened instinctively, as though bracing for reprimand. But Naomi's expression softened. "State your full name for compliance." "Emily Reyes," she said, her voice steady now. "I followed protocol. I spoke the truth. And I am willing to testify to everything I witnessed." Naomi nodded once. "And for that, you will not be punished. You will be protected." Emily's eyes widened with relief and disbelief all at once. The operations officer made a note on his tablet. "Dr. Hart, compliance has granted you full executive authority for staffing decisions related to this incident." Naomi exhaled slowly, feeling the gravity of her responsibility settle into place. "Then here is my directive," she said. "Supervisor Bradley will be relieved of duty effective immediately, pending a full internal investigation." The tablet chimed, "Access revoked." The crowd reacted with a swirl of murmurs and nods. Next, Naomi addressed the security officer. "You will undergo mandatory retraining," she said. "Bias does not disappear in an apology. It must be unlearned." "Yes, ma'am," he replied without hesitation. "I understand." Then she turned to Emily. "You will be transferred to the operations training program. Naomi announced. Your integrity is exactly what this airline needs. Emily blinked, stunned. Dr. Hart, thank you. A few passengers clapped softly. Others nodded in agreement. The gate, once tense with conflict, now began to shift, as though something long overdue was finding its shape. But Naomi was not finished. She raised her phone again. Carla, confirm that Phase 3 is active. Confirmed, Dr. Hart, the assistant replied. Ground operations have been notified. Public Relations has drafted a preliminary statement. The audit report will be ready within 45 minutes. The operations officer turned to her. Dr. Hart, shall we prepare for boarding once the review is complete? Naomi looked at the crowd around her, at the passengers who had watched the entire ordeal unfold, at the staff who had learned their lessons in real time, and at the screens still flashing the grounded status of the flight. Not yet, she said. Not until every passenger understands why this flight was stopped. The gate grew quiet again. Naomi stepped forward, not standing above anyone, but standing unmistakably in her authority. You did not witness an inconvenience today, she said to the crowd. You witnessed what happens when people are judged before they are seen. A few nodded. A few lowered their eyes. A few held their phones higher, determined to record every syllable. This flight was not grounded because of one woman's mistake, Naomi continued. It was grounded because accountability finally landed. Silence stretched, thick and meaningful. And then, slowly, passengers began to clap. Not loudly, not theatrically, but with the steady conviction of people who understood that they had witnessed a moment larger than a seat or a ticket or a delay. A moment where truth, long overdue, had finally taken its place. The applause did not thunder, it rose slowly. Like dawn light creeping across a dark horizon, steady and certain. It spread from one side of the gate to the other until every passenger, every witness, and even a few staff members joined in. Not because Naomi demanded it, and not because the situation was dramatic, but because the truth had finally been spoken aloud in a place where it had so often been ignored. The operations officer waited for the sound to settle before stepping forward. Dr. Hart, he said respectfully. Ground control is asking whether you would like to reopen the flight for boarding. Naomi glanced at the large departure screen, still flashing the word grounded in bold red letters. For the first time in minutes, she allowed her shoulders to drop slightly, not from fatigue, but from resolution. She had done what she came here to do, even if she had never intended to do it in the first place. Yes, she said, but not until every corrective action is documented. The officer nodded and gave the signal to the staff across the terminal. Screens flickered. Systems updated. The red warning on the gate display dissolved into a soft blue, clearing the flight for reboarding. The crowd murmured with relief, yet all eyes remained on Naomi. Emily Reyes, the trainee who had spoken the truth when no one else dared, stepped closer. Dr. Hart, she said, her voice full of awe. I have never seen anyone handle something like that with so much control. Naomi turned to her, offering a small, grounded smile. Control is not something you earn once, she replied. It is something you choose every time the world tries to take it from you. Emily nodded, her eyes shimmering with a mixture of gratitude and new understanding. The security officer approached next. He looked smaller than before, as if the uniform no longer gave him the authority it once did. Dr. Hart, he said, I am truly sorry. I will accept the retraining and whatever else is required. I understand I have work to do. Naomi did not grant him a smile, but she granted him honesty. Growth begins where certainty ends, she said. Start there. He bowed his head. The supervisor, now stripped of authority and visibly shaking, stood a few steps away. Compliance officers had arrived quietly behind him, their presence signaling that the internal review was officially underway. Naomi did not spare him further words. The system he had ignored would now handle him with the same scrutiny he had failed to give others. Passengers began forming a new line, but it was nothing like the first. People did not look away this time. They looked at Naomi with recognition, with respect, with a kind of quiet admiration reserved for those who stand their ground without ever raising their voice. A middle-aged woman at the front of the line spoke softly. Thank you for not walking away, she said. Naomi's eyes warmed. I have walked away too many times, she answered. Not today. The operations officer signaled the start of new boarding procedures, and one by one passengers made their way down the jet bridge. But Naomi remained where she was, centered and steady, watching as the consequences of truth rippled outward. Carla's voice chimed in through her phone. Dr. Hart, the public relations team is drafting a statement. They want your approval on the language. Send it, Naomi said. But it must say the truth plainly. No corporate disguises. No softening. Understood, Carla replied. And the audit team? They will proceed with the full review, Naomi said. Every branch. Every complaint. Every pattern. Naomi lowered her phone and allowed the weight of the moment to settle. This was not about a seat or a delay or a single disrespectful passenger. This was about the long, unspoken lessons that shaped her life. The ones learned in hotel lobbies, at airport counters, behind velvet ropes, at conference doors, and in every room where someone looked at her and saw less than what she was. She glanced at the now empty chair where the white passenger had sat so confidently. For a moment, Naomi imagined herself at 16 again, standing at another airport counter, holding her mother's hand while a clerk questioned her right to be there. She wished that girl could see her now. The flight attendant at the gate finally approached, gesturing respectfully. Dr. Hart, we are ready for you to board. Your seat is waiting. Naomi nodded. As she walked toward the jet bridge, every passenger she passed stepped slightly aside, not out of fear or obligation, but out of respect. Before she crossed the threshold, she spoke one final sentence, not to the crowd, not to the staff, but to the world that had shaped her. I did not raise my voice today, she said, because I did not need to. I raised the standard instead. And with that, she boarded the aircraft, not as a delayed passenger, not as a woman defending her worth, but as a leader reclaiming a space that had tried and failed to push her out.